Hi folks, this is Scott Villeneuve here with my good friend Ernie Shipman, and we've got Lexi the dog here, and we're talking about this book, your first book.
My first book.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
There's no place to color in it, though.
No, lots of words. This isn't one of those books. But this is based on the Westminster Shorter Catechism, which is a study that you've been leading our men's group, using this as the framework for it.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about why you chose to write this book.
Sure. Well, it's a discipleship guide, and it's based, like you said, on the Westminster Shorter Catechism, which was developed about 400 years ago, and it was a teaching tool. This I called the adult guide. Discipleship guide. The Shorter Catechism was primarily developed as a children's teaching tool.
Oh, okay.
But this isn't to be condescending. The reason I've done this is I've just seen, and I've explained this in the preface to the book, there's just such a lack of knowledge, biblical knowledge in the church today, of just basic doctrines, who God is, how do we become believers, how do we live as believers, how do we use prayer, the sacraments, things like that. So it's just a basic introduction, just to give people a grounding in the faith, so that they can be more, so that, as the first question says, what's the chief end of man? To glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Well, how can we know to glorify God and enjoy Him whether we don't know who God is,
right?
And we don't know who we are, how we were made and what we were intended to be made as.
True.
And then we see also how God has saved us, and everything of our salvation is of God. Mm-hmm. So when we see that, we can know how to live. And that's a large section on the law of God, on the Ten Commandments, and not as a rule to be saved, but after you are saved, to learn how to live and to be to live a godly life.
I mean, I've been a Christian since I was a child. Mm-hmm. So, in a sense,
no personal grooming.
I've been in and around this for the majority of my life, and certainly for my entire adult life. But getting back to those basic concepts, and even if you have studied the Bible, reinforcing those. I mean, how many times do you need to hear and study and hear sermons on, let's just say, the prodigal son, and you start to think of it, oh, well, what about as the other brother? Or you take some kind of perspective on it. It's the same with this shorter catechism. Some of these fundamental concepts are it's almost like they're so fundamental, a lot of people just, either they don't know them or they just assume that they did.
Yeah. Well, the shorter catechism, when this was developed 400 years ago, this was pretty much the daily tool that parents were using to teach their children. And parents today they've just given up on that, and they leave it to the church. But the church is often not doing that either. A lot of times the sermons are more topical rather than expository. And when you preach in an expository way, you're taking a book and you're working through it. So you have to look at every doctrine in the book. You can't ignore things. And a lot of times Sunday school is they tell a story and they have a craft and they have a snack. Well, that's not really teaching biblical truth. I mean, there's some there, but it's not a systematic way of teaching and instructing children how to live. And not only how to live, but how to think, and how to think about God, and how to think about how that incorporates into, we're given 10,080 minutes a week. And we spend 60 to 90 of those in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time, it's just, what are we doing with our time? This incorporates all of your life into thinking about the Lord and thinking about how can you live your life to please Him.
When you put it into perspective that way, it's certainly a minimal amount. And speaking for myself, there are times on Sunday morning, I've gotten up early for 6 days and I work hard and have a family and everything, and it's like,
you don't feel like there's anything left in you.
Right.
Yeah.
but a daily study. And I gave one of the copies of this book to a dear friend, and his comment was, "Thanks, I'll read it." And I said, "Well, hey, I
I
want
don't want you to read it. I want you to.
exactly. This is a great model for how many catechisms are there?
There's 107 questions.
107.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great 107-day
Or
study.
the way you and I are doing it, or like you and I are doing this individually, just one-on-one. And that's what this was kind of meant to be for individuals, but also for groups or small groups or just one-on-one. And you see that's you and I in the front. And we meet once a week and for 30 minutes, and we'll pray for each other. And we'll just take one question, like, I'll just pick one at random. What is required in the first commandment? The first commandment requires us to know and acknowledge God to be the only true God and our God, and to worship and glorify Him accordingly. And then we'll just read a few scriptures from that we'll talk about that. And then I've asked some questions, thoughts to consider, and just to get us thinking, where's my thought at on that? Where have I been in my life thinking about that? Where am I, what is my perspective on that question? And then there's a personal application question, or a couple of questions to get me thinking, how can I start to incorporate these truths into my life? So this isn't really a quick fix. And like, say, you and I are doing this 1 week at a time. So hopefully during the week, you're thinking about this question.
Sure.
And you'll have some time to think about it. And that's how we did this with our children. There's a great book by a woman named Star Mead. It's called Training Hearts, Teaching Minds. And she sort of gave me some ideas on this. She took hers a little differently, and she used a lot of crayon language because she was doing it with children. And we used it with our children when they were smaller. And it was I think I got more out of it than the kids did, because it really gave me a fresh perspective on the Christian faith. And I think when you break it down into small chunks like that over time, it gives you time to incorporate it into your life and really make it part of your life.
I found the questions and the personal application lines at times convicting, and certainly convicting, but also encouraging.
Yeah.
How it takes a good hard look at yourself, and you say, am I doing this? Am I availing myself of this aspect of what God has for me? Well, it's an adult discipleship guide to the Westminster Shorter Catechism by Ernest Shipman, and it's available in softcover on Amazon.
And soon to be Kindle too. I think we just got to go in and do a few clicks and tell it to be a Kindle product.
A Kindle book, absolutely. Yeah. And I got my copy, but gave it away for Christmas. But I know there's a whole bunch en route.
I bought a few authors' copies. Yeah.
Nice, that's great. So we'll put the link below in the description. And thank you very much for watching. And it's great to see you, buddy.
Thanks.